Hello and welcome. Thank you for clicking on my video. I never thought I would release this video that quickly, but it appears that there are a lot of guys in community struggling with installing OPNSense or pfSense on Hetzner Proxmox bare metal host. So that's what I wanted to show you today. And if you waited for this video, these are the guys who pressured me into doing this. So give them a round of applause. And it wasn't like a bad pressure or bad influence, because sometimes I need that kind of push to start doing something. Without any further ado, let's get into it. There are two ways of dealing with OPNSense or pfSense installation on Hetzner Proxmox bare metal host, and let me demonstrate you that with a small diagram. So here you have a client. Let me make this bigger, or actually, yeah, that's better. So we've got a client. It may be you, it may be any other client that needs to reach that firewall or machines behind it. And we have the firewall itself. And in between, there is a, no, not that. Yeah, that will do. And in between, there is a Hetzner host. So what you want is have your client go to Hetzner host, and then from there go to your firewall. We have a VM that's connected to this firewall. And the communication goes both ways. And the client wants to connect to the OPNSense and then reach, I don't know, the web server over here. Web server 80 or 443. So in order to get this up and running, there are two ways, as I just said. You have a NAT way of doing things. You're going to have a double NAT. So Proxmox host will control the NAT, and it will forward anything that comes on 80 or 443 over to the firewall. And then your OPNSense or pfSense box will decide what to do next with the traffic. Another way of dealing with this would be to create IP plus MAC address in your Hetzner robot control panel, and in that case your client will go to that IP. We don't need NAT anymore, and that IP is directly connected with OPNSense. Proxmox host doesn't even need to know what happens in here. And in this case your firewall will get a direct public IP address. And you don't have to choose when to use one or the other. You can actually use them both at the same time. So you can create two interfaces on OPNSense. One will be directly connected to the internet, and the other one will be controlled by the NAT inside Proxmox. So in this case, you don't waste a single IPv4 address, because they are pretty expensive these days. Now, you might also ask, what are the downsides of using one or the other? Well, as for the NAT example that we have over here, it will be cheaper to do it this way, but at the same time, it will require more administration from your side. So whenever you need to open up a port, you're going to need to open it in here and then on the firewall itself. And I doubt that net reflection will work properly, and it might be easier to use something like split DNS in this case. So there you have it, two downsides for the NAT profile. And just to summarize, so net reflection issues, and you're gonna need to spend more time configuring stuff. Now moving on to the separate IP plus MAC address, and this method is what I usually use on Proxmox hosts that I deploy. It actually only has one downside, which is the price of that separate IP address. So if you are setting up, let's say, a test host, you might not have the luxury of separate IP plus MAC address, then, well, use NAT. Okay, with this covered, let me show you what you need to do to achieve that. In this terminal, I'm logged into my test host, and it's not add Hetzner, but the process will be the same. I just didn't have a spare host, and I didn't want to spend a lot of money creating a new one. If you followed my tutorial on how to install Proxmox at Hetzner, go back to that host and disable the firewall. Because we're gonna use a UFW, which is uncomplicated firewall from Canonical. It's a little easier to use than IP tables themselves, and it might conflict with some of the rules Proxmox is generating. Once disabled, go to the console and install UFW package. apt update. You can ignore these errors on my screen because this is a demo setup. I didn't want to go ahead and add the community repos to my installation. So from here, just do apt install UFW. Okay, now that's done. Go to your Proxmox server. Click on one of your servers that you want to configure if you have a cluster. If not, just click on the host itself. Go to network and create few empty bridges. In this example, I'll create 2. So create Linux bridge. I'll name it VMBR100, and I don't need anything else in here. Then I'll create bridge 101. You can give it a comment, for example, LAN 2. And let me rename that one as LAN 1. So these 2 bridges will be for LAN networks. And now I need a bridge for my Proxmox to communicate with the OPNSense. And I'll use 10.99.99.200/24. Comment OPNSense van. Create. Notice that I didn't use any ports as slaves, and you're gonna see how this works in just a few minutes. At this point, apply the configuration and go back to the terminal. First, we need to edit before rules in UFW. So go to nano etc UFW before.rules. Now paste this in here, and I'll leave this down below in the show notes so you don't have to retype this manually. But essentially what these lines do, for example, this first one specifies the group name, then pre-routing except. Post-routing except means that UFW controls both. Then we flush IP tables, just in case there are any conflicting rules in IP tables themselves. Then these 2 lines are a little bit ahead of schedule, so I explain them a little later. But this one does outbound NAT for you, and these do inbound NAT for you. So you'll be able to go out from network 10.99.99.0/24 out to the internet. Now you need to allow packet forwarding. Do nano etc sysctl. Whoops, sorry. .conf. And uncomment this line to allow packet forwarding. Save the file, exit. Now let's apply sysctl settings. So sysctl -p and then sysctl -- system. Now, because we are smart admins and we don't want to lock ourselves out, we allow 2 rules, which are 22 and 8006. To pass through our firewall to this machine so that we can access SSH and web UI for the Proxmox. Now you can say UFW enable. Yes. And you can say systemctl enable UFW. Now when the firewall is enabled, let's start it. Start UFW. And let's check the status. Alright, I'm back. The host was restarted. And now what we need to do is run these two commands. UFW default allow outgoing and UFW default allow forward. Then after this we need to do UFW reload, which should reload all of our firewall rules. Now let's assign interfaces in OPNSense. On this screen, click 1 and enter. We don't want to assign VLANs now. And for the WAN interface, we want to specify VTNet 0. Nothing else is interesting to us in here. Do you want to proceed? Yes, please. Okay, this is finally done, and now I want to set the interface IP address. I don't want to use DHCP, and the address would be 10.99.99.254. 24 is our mask, and the gateway is 99.99.200. No, we don't want to use the same DNS server. Our DNS server would be Cloudflare. No to IPv6. No to the HCP server. You want to change to the HTTP? No. 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 Okay, that's all good now. Now, if you copy this address without a port, go to the new tab and enter it in there. And you should see the self-signed certificate warning. And then you will be able to go to your OPNSense login page. But when you want to log in, you will receive this error, HTTP referrer error. And unfortunately, I didn't find a way how to change it in the OPNSense console. So that's why we are installing this Debian 11 VM. Now, while that is going, I want to create two VMs. Alpine 1. Next. Alpine Linux. Next. I don't care. I just care about networking, which would be VMBR 100. Actually, memory is just 800 meg. And you don't have to do the same. I just want to demonstrate to you that LAN networks will be able to talk to each other. Next. Finish. Now I want Alpine VM2. And I choose Alpine Linux because you don't have to install it when you want to just test networking and things like that. You can run the system directly from the ISO. The bridge is 101 or LAN 2. Next. Finish. Now just log into your Debian VM and use browser to navigate to your OPNSense installation. And the address of our OPNSense is 10.99.99.254. What we need to do now is go to System, Settings, Administration, and disable HTTP referrer check. So save. That's pretty much it. Now in here, just log in. And we'll be able to configure our firewall from this side. First and foremost, go to Rules, Floating, and add 2 floating rules for the WAN interface. So you can access the firewall later when you activate 2 LAN interfaces. Interface WAN, protocol TCP, destination this firewall, destination port range is HTTP, save, add another one, I mean we can just clone that one, and change it to HTTPS, save, apply changes. Alright, that's it for now. Go to interfaces, assignments, and let's add our 2 LAN interfaces. LAN 1 and LAN 2. Let's change the IP address to 2.3/24, save, apply changes. And for the LAN 2, I'll use 10.2.2.254/24, save. When that is done, go to Rules and allow the traffic to go from LAN 1 to anywhere. And the same for LAN 2. This is just for testing purposes, so I'm not going to bother with locking down anything. Alright, that's done. Now DHCP from 1 to 100. Okay, save. And the same for LAN 2. From 1 to 100. Save. The HTTP server is running, and now we can go back to our Alpine machines and see if they can contact the HTTP server. And now, hey, it's all working. A little bit of troubleshooting solves it all. Now 10.2.2.1, yeah, that's responding. And from Alpine 2 to 10.3.3.1, oh, sorry, ping. Ping 10.3.3.1, that's working too. Great stuff, great stuff. Coming back to our anti-bridges, this works because bridge exists inside of your machine, and these bridges, they will not be able to talk to other bridges on other hosts, but for the inter-host communication, this is perfect. And there you go. The first method that's involving NAT is covered. Now moving on to IP plus MAC address, it's much easier, because what you can do is go to OPNSense, click hardware, add new network device, and use VMBR0, which is native to Proxmox host. And that's where our public IP address is connected to. Click add. And now we have to restart the OPNSense, because for some reason it doesn't recognize the new interfaces on the fly. I think pfSense does that automatically, but OPNSense, you need to restart. So let's do that. Reboot the system is option 6. Yes, reboot, and wait for it to come back. Okay, so this came back. Now we need to log into our firewall. Root OPNSense. Now let's go to interfaces, assignments, and add our VTNet 3 as van public. And van public will be DHCP configured, because this configuration will work on Hetzner too, as long as you've taken the correct MAC address from your interface on the robot control panel, and then go to hardware and paste that MAC address here. As long as you have that in place, you will be able to use DHCP configuration, no static configuration involved. Hit save and hit apply changes. Now when the changes are applied, let's go to overview and van public. As you can see, it already grabbed the IP address. In our case, it's a private one, but it's within the same range as our Proxmox host. So if you are running it on Hetzner host, it will grab the public IP address. But as I mentioned before, sometimes you just don't have that luxury to spend money on a separate IPv4 address when this host is just a test one. That's it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. Thumbs up if you've noticed that I have a better camera now. My green screen setup is not that robust at the moment because I don't have proper lighting. So as you can see, you still see some edges in here and there. But hopefully I'm gonna fix that with proper lighting. Don't forget that at 5k subs, and it's a little filthy, it has seen some life, let me tell you. So don't forget that at 5k subscribers we have a live stream where I will be flashing this bad boy with OpenWRT instead of native UniFi firmware. But for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.